Hi, and welcome to Fantastic Friday. Today we're talking about the Fantastic Four number 11, The Impossible Man. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater, a new comic coming in October. Monday is the Final Order Cutoff for the first issue, so let your comics retailer know that you want them to set aside a copy for you. They're menaced by an interesting-looking villain who, at least on the cover, appears to be possibly another variation on the Easter Island face motif. The team looks really good in this drawing. The look is starting to gel into, what becomes their iconic look. The Thing is looking more like, he's made out of, cracked paint and rocks than just, lumps. Really interesting opening page. You have everybody clamoring for the new issue of the Fantastic Four. There's a line out the door, and the Fantastic Four also read their own comic magazine, and they're afraid they might not get a copy because of the crowd. And yeah, everybody's got a copy. And this is just, it's fun. It's a fun little thing putting the comic that you're reading in the world of the comic, but it's also like amazing salesmanship that, if everybody in this comic, if the characters in this comic were all drinking Coca-Cola or something, you think about that. But the product that is now part of the story that you're reading, the product is the comic book that they're selling. And it makes total sense because, okay, yeah, the person who's reading this comic has, obviously bought this comic, but it's going to make them want to stick around. It's going to make them want to buy that next issue. They feel like they're part of something. And this combined with the letters pages is just, part of that synergy that made, that was an important element of that Marvel, of Marvel Mania was, making it feel like a club that you could be part of. And this story specifically really ties in that way. It basically marries the letters page and that sort of, fandom element, marries it to the actual story itself, the meat of the comic book. And then the next page, we have some kids playing Fantastic Four. And again, the kids that are reading your comic, you're kind of giving them ideas about how to, carry the Fantastic Four and their Fantastic Four fandom into the rest of their life. And these are actually some, pretty good ideas that are, somewhat accessible. The special effect that this kid is using to pretend to be Mr. Fantastic was used by Roger Corman in that 1990s Fantastic Four movie that was never released. They used that exact effect to make it look like Mr. Fantastic is stretching. I think it's used in the wedding scene with Reed and Sue as his arm is sticking out the window, basically like a hand on a stick. As these kids are playing Fantastic Four, the real Fantastic Four sees it, and this kid shows how he can crush a can. The Thing shows how he can crush a lamppost. Mr. Fantastic tells the boy who's pretending to be Mr. Fantastic to give these flowers to the Invisible Girl. Sue and Johnny demonstrate their powers. Johnny gives him a don't play with fire public service announcement, and then they're gone. And the kids, only as they're leaving, realize that was them. That was the real Fantastic Four. They were so close, I could have reached out and touched them. Johnny says, I guess they'll have something to talk about for a while. And the Thing says, sure, they'll tell how they met four freaks in the street. So nice character work there, the Thing's sort of morose disposition. Now they get back to the Baxter building, and a mail carrier has a giant bag of their fan mail, which again, more promotion. This is a stand-in for the fan mail that they were getting at Marvel for the comic. That I guess that's the other thing. It really does encourage people to write letters in sort of, like a fun make-believe way that like you can sort of imagine that if you're writing a fan letter to Marvel Comics Fantastic Four, it's actually going to get to the Fantastic Four. That's kind of a fun little notion that I think would, encourage people to write in. The mail carrier is named Mr. Lumpkin. I don't know if when Jack was drawing this character, if he had intended for it to be Willie Lumpkin, or if he had just sort of drawn a postal carrier into the story, and then after the fact, Stan Lee named him Willie Lumpkin, or if this was, something they had, that was always part of the plan that they had discussed, having Willie Lumpkin in it. But Willie Lumpkin, the name comes from a comic strip that Stan Lee had done a few years prior to this, an actual, comic strip about a postal carrier. So Stan's using that name again, sort of expanding, his personal universe. The city seems to be consumed with Fantastic Four mania, and everybody wants to get in on the act. Willie Lumpkin wants to join the team, and so he demonstrates his special power, which is the ability to wiggle his ears. Sue does the belt buckle device that opens their secret elevator that takes them to the floors where their base of operations is. There's a little bit of sibling rivalry going on between Sue and Johnny. Don't be disrespectful to your elders, Johnny boy. Okay, Grandma. Lots of nice little character moments in this particular issue. And then the Thing dumps this giant pile of fan mail, and they're reading it. So also, not only is the editor of the book reading your fan mail, but the actual Fantastic Four is reading your fan mail. And then the Thing gets a package, maybe my favorite panel in the whole series. He opens it up and gets whapped with a boxing glove on a spring. References the Yancey gang, the Yancey Street gang. Lots of surprises in this issue. Reed has a surprise for the Thing, formula that changes him back to Ben Grimm, maybe permanently. And Sue says, "Oh, Ben, you're a real living doll again." Who am I to disagree? And Johnny is doing lasso tricks with his flame. And I like this thought balloon here. Poor Ben, if he changes back to the Thing again, I don't want to be around to see it. Just adding like a little extra characterization that, maybe wasn't there before that bit of dialogue. Johnny says he's gonna go down to the garage and fool around with my new TR4. Okay, kids, see you later. And maybe he was just getting bored and restless, and ready to go. But adding that little element, it's a nice touch. Can't blame the squirt for getting restless, Reed. Teenagers have to keep on the go all the time. And so that makes Reed think back to their teenage years when they were first, moving into their college dorm together. This is a good panel here. Just the body language contrasting these two, and the Thing thinks that Reed Richards is fucking with him, and Reed's like, "No, come on, buddy, relax, roomie. I've got a hunch we're going to get along fine." So we see, Ben Grimm in his football star days. Reed mentions that his father was a millionaire. I'm not sure what to make of that exactly. I think nowadays, if they were creating this team, they'd make Reed more of sort of like a genius who kind of that his economic background doesn't matter. That he has this genius, and obviously there'd be a bidding war from every college to see, to try to get him there on a scholarship. Ben Grimm, we've heard about him being a pilot, and here he is. He was a pilot in World War II. Reed Richards worked with the underground for the OSS. So I'm assuming, he was part of the French resistance, but, just from a couple of these guys wearing berets. But it's also possible that he was part of like a resistance within Germany, or there were resistance movements in, all the occupied countries of Europe. And he talks about how when he was over there in World War II, he just kept thinking about the girl he left behind. Please, Reed, let's skip over that part of it. It's rather painful for me. But Sue, it's you I'm talking about. So I like that. He thinks maybe she's upset because, hey, who's this girl you're talking about? And he clarifies, it's always been you since we were kids together, living next door to each other. That's just it, Reed. I know how you feel, and I don't ever want to hurt you, but there's still the shadow of Submariner between us. I understand, my dear. I won't mention it again, not until you've made your decision once and for all. And I explored this thread thoroughly in Fantastic Four Grand Design. And I did notice, looking at this issue, there's sort of like the scene of Mr. Fantastic saying, "Oh, why don't you give those flowers to the Invisible Girl?" And I'm trying to keep track now, because I feel like every instance of there being some sort of affection shown between these two comes from Reed to Sue. Like I do believe that Reed is more interested in a relationship with Sue than Sue is with him. You don't. I'm trying to see if there's any scenes where you see the reverse, where if you see Sue initiating some sort of affection, or the equivalent of giving flowers to Reed, and so far no. So and even Reed's even completing her sentence there. She could say, "I don't ever want to hurt you, but I don't love you, I don't want to marry you," or whatever. But Reed makes it about the Submariner. And maybe it's not. Maybe she's just not that into you, Reed. And then the other thing to note, because the way I've always read this story was in the Marvel Treasury edition, and it was put out after Jack Kirby had already left Marvel, and Stan was not really as was no longer like as active in sort of like the actual writing of things. And so it had Roy Thomas's notes. And Roy was like a little more like, he was looking at this almost from a fan's perspective and things, sort of like he was like one step removed. And so he made a commentary about, because at this point, when that Treasury came out, it's the 70s. And so Jack Kirby's working on this comic. He's 44 years old. Stan Lee's working on it. He's 40. And so they're writing about characters, and maybe it hasn't sunken into them yet that they're like they're sort of on the wrong side of 40. Roy puts a little note saying, Reed must have re-enlisted in the Korean fracas because Sue's not that old, because this would imply that if Reed's the same age as Jack Kirby, he's 44 now, in the 60s. If Sue was his girlfriend while he was over there, and if they grew up together, then Sue might be 44 also. She might be 40. By the 70s, she'd be in her 50s. And so that's why, just in that short period of time, and just in that 10-year period, that's how quickly your characters can sort of age if you're trying to maintain this illusion of a real passage of time. So that was sort of an early indication of setting back the clock. Even in the 60s, it feels like it's pushing it, because I guess Reed could be in his 40s, and Ben, and then Sue could be in her 40s too. Maybe she's 39 or something, if you want to have a heroine that's in her 30s or something. But yeah, she's in her 40s too. And I guess that's fine. That's fine to have a superhero team that's all in their 40s in their, first couple issues. But I always think of these superheroes being, in their 20s, maybe their 30s, especially when you're a kid. You can't even imagine somebody sort of running around in their 30s. But placing their origin firmly in World War II, it makes it into a sticky situation when, 10 years later, you're trying to tell stories with these characters, 20 years later, 30 years later. And now we're what, 50 some years later. And all of those various, conundrums have been dealt with in comics. I guess it's it's sort of, like rock and roll or something. Like, nobody expected it to last as long as it did. And when I did Fantastic Four Grand Design, that was sort of a choice I had to make too, because it's like, okay, do I put them in, World War II in their origin? I mean, that is interesting. That's very fun. But then that, very solidly limits like what, where their, sort of adventures take place. And so I sort of, to kind of have my cake and eat it too, I kind of placed them in a non-specified, military conflict. So if you wanted to read it as World War II, you could do that. If you wanted to read it as the Vietnam War, you could do that. If you wanted to read it as, the Gulf War, it was an issue I had to address. Anyway, we get a nice recap of their origin story. It's not quite as heated. The most memorable part for me is always the exchange between Sue and Ben Grimm, where Sue calls him a coward. Here, it's toned down a little. She said, "At least we'll show Reed that we're not afraid." And he does get offended. Afraid? No one ever used that word to me before. But he doesn't, break the table in half, at being called a coward like he does in the first issue. And then they go into space. Up ahead, we're heading right into a cosmic storm. So that's interesting too, because it kind of changes the context a little bit, because my reading of the Fantastic Four origin, the first issue, was always that those cosmic rays were just like an ever-present thing that you just had to deal with if you went into space. That we hadn't had a manned space flight in real life by this point, and so that was like a conjecture that maybe once you're out of the shield of the Earth's atmosphere, that you're just subject to all kinds of intense forms of radiation out there, and you'll be roasted alive or mutated, as the Fantastic Four were. But this time around, it sort of frames it as, no, it's not like as soon as you get into space, there's these cosmic rays that are just always there that are going to be bombarding you, but it refers to it as a cosmic storm. So it might have just been some kind of freak thing that was just passing through, and maybe makes the Fantastic Four origin a little more credible, because obviously in real life, when when we had real space flight, it kind of makes this a relic of the early space race, because once we went out there, it's like, okay, there aren't these rays that are going to completely destroy you, as you fly out there, but made it into sort of a freak thing, and also makes the origin, like, I like an origin that's a little more like you can't repeat it, like where it's like they went into space and there was this freak storm, kind of like the sort of nautical adventures that I feel like this is an updated version of. That it's like, oh, our ship was out and there was this storm and our ship was washed up on the shore, in sort of like a nautical kind of thing, and making sort of a cosmic version of that. But they go down to Earth. The Thing turns into the Thing. The Torch turns into the Torch. Invisible Girl turns into Invisible Girl. And then Reed, signals a jet with his stretching arm. And Sue has been acting. She's been a little bit quiet this issue, and we're finding out why. I hadn't wanted to mention it, Reed, but I've gotten some letters lately, some disturbing letters. Now that's, that sounds bad. That sounds pretty bad. A number of readers have said that I don't contribute enough to you. You'd be better off without me, and perhaps they're right. She's not exaggerating, Ben. Look, I never expected anything like this. And so this is a reference to actual letters that they were getting in the letters page saying, the Fantastic Four is great. Invisible Girl sucks. Get rid of her. And so having the actual character react to that, man, nice touch, really nice sort of, fourth wall kind of stuff. And we're going to break the fourth wall right now. Well, it's time to set the record straight here and now. Take it easy, pal. The kids didn't mean any harm. They just don't understand. And so now he's speaking directly to the reader, pointing at the reader. He's got Abraham Lincoln there to back him up. Maybe this will help them understand. See this bust of Abe Lincoln? Remember his famous remark about his mother, the time he said that all that he was, all that he ever hoped to be, he owed to her. Lincoln's mother was the most important person in the world to him, but she didn't help him fight the Civil War. She didn't split rails for him. She didn't battle with his enemies. In fact, if we printed Lincoln's life in our mag, some wise guy would probably write in and ask why we don't leave his mother out of the story, because she doesn't do enough. So, man, this is powerful. This is really fun to back up his claim, because, a lot of the complaints were, hey, the Thing can punch people. The Torch can set things on fire. Reed can, stretch into all kinds of shapes and situations. All the Invisible Girl can do is disappear. She doesn't contribute anything. And so, Reed gives some examples of times that she was the key to victory. And here she is joining in the fight with the Skrulls in issue 2. She got them out of Dr. Doom's trap, and that, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Sue. And you could probably even make a stronger claim than this, because this feels like a little bit of weak sauce, like they're showing Sue tripping the Skrulls, but she's done even more than that. And she's definitely like an action hero as well. And this issue, they will continue to address this issue throughout the series, because I feel like later on, when they introduce Sue's force fields, and then how she can turn her force fields into like little projectiles that she can shoot at things, I think that was sort of addressing this thing of maybe the balance of power in the team wasn't quite right, just in terms of like superpowers, and to kind of give her sort of beef up her powers, give her some sort of proactive thing, and really developing the Invisible Girl into a much more original concept than what she starts out as sort of just basically the Invisible Man. Again, the Thing is really the only fully original character, which is why I think he tends to be people's favorite. Mr. Fantastic, just a riff on Plastic Man. The Human Torch, just carrying over the Human Torch from from the earliest days of Marvel. If you readers want to see women fighting all the time, then go see lady wrestlers. Ben, take it easy, fella. Oh, for crying out loud, I'm the Thing again. Of all the crummy luck. But you were Ben Grimm for a longer time than ever before. So Reed Richards' formula is getting closer. And I like the reference to lady wrestlers. That's really great. And just that ongoing connection between these like early Marvel comics and the popular television wrestling of the day. They get an intruder alarm, and then it's coming from the saucer we kept as a memento of our adventure on Planet X. So I like this inter-issue continuity, which has been all through this, but Planet X kind of a little bit of a forgotten adventure. They have the flying saucer from that issue. Of course they do. And it's, part of their stuff. And maybe in a version of the Fantastic Four, it could be like the, iconic giant penny or dinosaur that's in the Bat Cave. And what's in this saucer? Surprise, happy birthday to Sue. While Johnny was gone from the group, Johnny, slipped away to set the cake up for her, to set the surprise. A birthday cake for me. Oh, you remembered. And so maybe, obviously Sue was, very upset about those fan letters, but maybe her, general, morose demeanor through this story was that, hey, it's my birthday and I guess everybody forgot. I'm so choked up. I don't know what to say. Interesting that she's serving everybody else. I think somebody would want to serve her, but again, just sort of, I guess, showing the family dynamic, showing her as, if they're going to compare her to Lincoln's mother, then I guess maybe they're sort of saying that she's like the mother of the group as well, and making sure all the kids get their slices of cake. But it also says something about her character, that it's her birthday, and she's not going to make it about herself. She still she wants to, share your cake with other people. And the cake looks pretty good. That's a huge cake, almost like a wedding cake. And the Thing is chowing down, but what a great party. Looks like nothing will happen to spoil it unless, I guess I spoke too soon. Look down there. And it's Mr. Lumpkin with his an even bigger sack of mail and blankety blank fans and comic magazine heroes and letters to the editor pages. Oh, my aching back. And editor's note, if you hadn't realized, the preceding story is a way of answering many of the interesting questions which our readers have written from time to time. In future issues, we shall attempt to pictorially comment on other letters from you valued fans. I don't think they ever did a sort of like stop everything special feature doing that before, but they do address some of those concerns a little more organically into the body of a typical Fantastic Four adventure, because this is not a typical Fantastic Four issue. I can't think of very many other examples of this, maybe any within the first 100 issues, where they split it into two chapters like a traditional superhero comic. This was one of the breakthroughs of the Fantastic Four, was that every issue was a complete comic length novel. This time they're splitting it up. Maybe a backward step. I don't know. I feel like it's nice to have a change of pace. And this is another sort of, lighthearted, sort of humorous story. Again, really great as a change of pace, but I could imagine readers at the time maybe getting a little worried, like, is this turning into a DC comic or something with just, shorter adventures and kind of silly adversaries. I got to say, though, Stan and Jack are still trying to figure out the tone themselves as they're creating this, like, because they were breaking new ground. And sometimes when you're breaking new ground, you kind of, you don't quite realize it. You don't quite realize what you're doing. And you can make some backward steps here and there. And not that I'd say this was a backward step, but I think they're figuring out the tone, figuring out what kind of stories they want to tell. And they don't go back here. We never see the Impossible Man again. A lot of these early villains we do see again. The Impossible Man we never see again. And we never really see a story quite like this. But yeah, the Impossible Man, I like his design. The color scheme's great. He comes to Earth. He's here to have fun. He's here as a tourist, and immediately he makes some pretty absurd transformations. He turns into like a little jet to fly away with like a goofy smiley face on it. And these guys tell him, hey, if you want some of our food, we need cold hard cash. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go get some. Where do I get this cold hard cash? Cash? What a strange word. What is cash? Cash is what they keep in banks, mister. Just go to a bank and ask for some. They love to give it away. And he's got this sly smile as he's playing a trick on the Impossible Man. But the Impossible Man, Many thanks. I'll do just that. He shows up at the bank, asks for some cash, turns into a flea to get through the vault door, and helps himself to two giant bags. The police shoot at him. He turns himself into iron. One of the things I like about this story is Jack has these opportunities to just draw these really outlandish transformations, very inventive, and we'll see more of like a toned down, more I guess maybe believable version of this, less silly version of this, with a character like the Absorbing Man. Similar name, similar head shape, but again, toned down a little to get it out of the realm of the absurd and into the realm of, semi-serious action adventure. The police ask the Fantastic Four for help. Impossible Man is having the time of his life, having this feast. And then he talks about his planet. The planet he comes from, planet Pop-Up. It's a super hostile planet. He got sick of all the, dodging all the monsters and predators there. And we see that maybe as a reaction to this dangerous environment, the Pop-Upians have developed this accelerated evolutionary process where they can just turn into whatever they need to be, whatever they can imagine on the spot. So this one turns into Crystal. Again, another cool looking texture, cool looking transformation on Jack's part. And the planet Pop-Up with this giant, flying mouth, like the Beholder from Dungeons and Dragons or something. Just really great, inventive looking alien landscape. And then you see the Pop-Upians turning into spaceships. Really like that design too. I do wonder if this satellite in the background, the way it's colored, it looks like a satellite in the background, but maybe if it were colored differently, maybe it's supposed to be some kind of radio apparatus sticking out of the sides of the Impossible Man's head, as sort of maybe extensions of his ears, finding an interesting planet and tracking himself down to Earth. Eating a big hot dog, big piece of cake. The thing just can't wait to punch this guy. And so he does, and he turns into a, spiky, like a cactus, I guess. Yow! Johnny can't wait for some action too. He springs into action. He turns into a giant plastic bag of water, which douses Johnny's flames. Reed enters the fight, a cool stretching panel. The Impossible Man shrinks down into a tiny missile, bounces around, and then hits the Invisible Girl. But he's not looking to do any harm. He's just having some fun. And so when he hits her, he just turns into a bunch of, flower petals. Now he's kind of annoyed from this reception he's getting. He turns into a giant buzzsaw and realizes that nobody transformed into anything to save them from the buzzsaw. What's the matter with all of you? Do you want to get hurt? Why didn't you turn into birds or something and fly away? I might have injured someone when I was a buzzsaw. Say, I just had a most refreshing thought. It just occurred to me that you Earthlings can't change the way I can. That means I'm the most powerful person on Earth. Jack and Stan sort of, they abandoned this character, never returned to him. And, maybe they thought he was too silly. Maybe they just forgot about him in their, continual, forward momentum. But he is kind of, he's like, he is like a DC character. He's like Mxyzptlk or Batmite, one of those like fourth dimensional imps. But I feel like he's a good fit for the Fantastic Four. He's, the same way those characters provide a change of pace for Superman or Batman. The Impossible Man can do that for the Fantastic Four. And yes, he is silly, but he's a little bit more credible. And they deal with him in a more interesting way. They do, even though the Impossible Man is a silly character, the Fantastic Four aren't just, this isn't just a silly story. They're not, they are maintaining their integrity. They are handling him the way they handle, Dr. Doom or the Submariner. So to me, it's just like another flavor, and it's something that maybe Stan and Jack could have, sprinkled in from time to time, for like a change of pace. And that has, this character has come back in more recent years from time to time, and that's sort of how they use him. They use him as, sometimes even sort of like a Deadpool, fourth wall breaking kind of character. But he turns into a monster, really cool looking monster, like something Jack would have done in The Demon. We get this nice car chase. This sort of he's having the time of his life, treating it like bumper cars. The Thing. I like this maneuver from The Thing. He sort of, jumps down from the Fantastic car, grabs the back of the car to stop it. The army shows up. And Reed explains, just how much danger everybody's in, and to demonstrate the Impossible Man turns into a giant bomb. Again, really cool design. You could just make a, like a ball with a fuse stuck in it, but Jack's always looking for a cool design. Reed stretches, throws him into the air. He explodes, turns into, gets one of those sort of, bat suits. Human Torch tries to hypnotize him with a spiral of flame. It worked. But, at this point, he's almost looking like the Joker with this big smile. He's The Mask. Jim Carrey's The Mask. I knew it. You do like me. You were worried about me. Just for that, I'm going to stay here and kid around with you always. So he's a little bit of like a Warner Brothers cartoon character, which again, I think if the comic was going to turn into just this, then it's like, oh, brother, but it works as a change of pace. And again, the story as a whole, they are dealing with him as sort of this, action adventure threat. Not like an issue of Superman where he's dealing with Mixoplick, where like Superman's kind of got his arms crossed and he's, tapping his head and stuff. There's no actual like action in Action Comics. And so they come up with what I think is a brilliant idea, extremely effective, and makes sense in, sort of a kid logic way. They're going to ignore him. And they ignore him, and the more they ignore him, the more he wants their attention. He makes a golden egg. They don't care. He turns into the old man of the sea and sits on Reed's back. We don't care. And so Reed tells the rest of the world to do the same thing. So everywhere he shows up, he's trying to, be the center of attention. Everybody ignores him. He's basically been exiled. He's been exiled from society. And that's the worst. And that's sort of an intolerable situation to be in, exile. And for somebody like the Impossible Man, who just loves excitement, loves to be the center of attention, it is, beyond intolerable. So he turns himself into a rocket ship and moves on. I'm going to find me another planet where a fella can have some fun. Earth is too dull. I'm never going to come back. And I'll tell all the other pop-upians to stay away too. Earth will never get our tourist business. No siree. And that wraps up our change of pace issue for now. Hope you liked it. Next month, it's back to normal again with a surprise-packed full-length thriller, The Fantastic Four Meet the Hulk. Don't miss it. So I think this issue was extremely effective as sort of a breather from all the storm and drang, to give you a little rest before, hey, they're going up against the Hulk. This is going to be some good stuff. We get a pinup page of the Submariner. I like this little glimpse of his underwater hideout. I like that he's taken this sunken Atlantean vessel, this ship, and turned it into a TV stand, a little media center with his radio and his books. Nice little touch. We have a giant fish thought to be extinct for millions of years that Submariner has, wrestled to death and hung up in his living room. His curtains are sea nets. He's got the largest pearl in existence, blasted loose by Submariner from a 30-foot clam. And there you have it. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater, a new comic book coming in October from IDW. Monday is the Final Order Cutoff, so ask your comics retailer to set aside a copy for you. I'll see you next time for Fantastic Four-Eye Day.